Hello there, I'm Carmelo from Nick and Mello's Hyperspace. You know what that means. It means like our videos, if you like our videos. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can be notified every time we upload a program. May the force be with you.
You are now entering Nick and Mello's hyperspace.
Hello, I'm Carmelo, and my two favorite characters from the new show Andor are Marva, the amazing Marva, and the other one, which is unlikely for me, is Dedra Miro, the Imperial. I found her really fascinating.
And my name is Nick, and my favorite character from Andor definitely has to be Luthen.
Luthen is amazing.
Yes, he is.
In our journey through hyperspace, we examine everything and anything Star Wars from the point of view of two lifelong fans, one young, one old, who came together through the will of the Force.
And in this episode, we are going to be discussing the latest Disney Plus show, Andor. So what we're going to do is, what we've done in the past is we just kind of jump right into it and discuss the show. But this we're going to do a little different. We're going to give you guys a little kind of spoiler-free section of the video. That way you guys can tune in, and if you haven't watched it, you can kind of get our general thoughts and feelings on it, go watch the show, then jump back on and finish and talk about all the spoilers with us. That way nobody's kind of left in the dark and we're all on equal footing. So
and there are some people that have started watching the show but sort of stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be a sort of a good way of sort of you're getting a sort of a general sense of the whole show, and then you can go and watch the rest.
That's right. This is the longest so far Disney Plus Star Wars show. It's 12 episodes, which is
true.
That's a very long show. And there's a lot that goes on. So I don't know how we're going to fit this in, but we're going to make it work somehow. So I guess I'll start with you, Carmelo, because you are a big fan of this series, way more than I am. So just give me your first impressions, your first thoughts. What's your general sense of the show?
I could make a 7-hour episode of our podcast talking about Andor. I think it was halfway through the shows that I was in my living room and saying, okay, I need to write a whole book on this show because there are so many things going. I think what I find the most remarkable about this show is the idea that we get to slowly understand why characters think the way they do. There are so many, especially on television, which is sort of quick. You're sort of getting all the actions and you're sort of slowly getting their reasoning. What I loved about the show is that we're really getting into the characters' heads, trying to figure out why are they doing what they're doing, and all of the different ways, that people enter a rebellion, all of the different ways that people enter into the empire, all of the ways in which people are interested in discipline or in resistance or in revolution, what it means to different people, what revolution is. And I found that incredible, just absolutely incredible. This is a character-driven show.
Mm-hmm.
And some people like the show because of that, and some people have gotten a little bored because of that. But I am in heaven watching the show.
Well, you and I talked as the show was coming out, and we talked a lot about what we liked, and I expressed to you some things I didn't like. And I'm going to preface this before I finish and go on. I did not think the show was bad. I don't think the show was, no indictment on the people that created the show, the actors, the writers. I thought it was beautiful. There's some incredible shots of the show.
Mm-hmm.
The acting was really good. I mean, there's so many good performances in the show. To me, it's an adjustment because it is much different than other Star Wars series and movies that we've gotten.
Yes.
And I think that's a good thing. I can appreciate it, even if it wasn't my favorite thing. I appreciate Star Wars for doing something different and trying to step outside of their formulaic way of doing things. I'm cool with that. Like I said, it didn't gel with me for whatever reason. I don't know what it was exactly. I can't really pinpoint it, but I agree with you. There are a lot of standout characters in the show. There's some characters that we spend a lot of time with, and there's a few that they're only in there for a handful, maybe an episode or two, or handful of moments, but you're invested, and then something happens to them, or they go away, and you're like, whoa, I missed that guy, or he was incredible. Like, I want to see more of him, or what's up with him. And I think that's just, like I said, that attributes to good writing and great acting. Because all these, there's a lot of big name actors in here that you wouldn't think of. And like I said, it's a 12 episodes, so a lot of people, I think a lot of complaints I've heard, and I kind of agreed with them at some points, is the pacing of the show is different. It's a very slow burn, slow burn.
Yeah. I posted on Facebook that Andor is like a Victorian novel.
Yeah.
So you need to think about it as an 800-page novel in which the span of the narrative is gigantic. I mean, one of the really interesting things about the show is like the first 3 episodes are almost like a little story in itself.
Right.
The next 3 episodes are sort of like a little story in itself. And then the last 6 are sort of the consequences of everything that happened in the first 6 episodes.
Right.
And so it is not sort of one little arc like we got with Kenobi, or one little arc like we get in Mandalorian season 1. Right. They're sort of, those shows are very tight. This show is very sprawling. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at episode 5 and you look at episode 2, you would think you're in 2 different shows.
That's true.
They're very different atmospheres and moods and things like that. And so I think part of the, I'm going to call it a problem in quotes, because for me, it's not a problem, but part of the sort of conflicting reaction of the show is that it's telling stories in ways that Star Wars television hasn't really done, or hasn't done at all, whether in animation or in live action. And so for some fans that has taken a little bit of time, or they have just been turned off by it and have moved away. Not everybody's going to like everything.
That's okay.
That's okay.
That's totally okay. Like I said, I appreciate for the risk that it took, and some of it worked for me, some of it didn't. I enjoyed that more than just another run-of-the-mill, here's this character you remember, here's some other characters you remember, might know of.
Yes.
And they all kind of just culminate at the end to something, kind of like the Book of Boba Fett. They had no shot at that show, which I enjoyed that show a lot, honestly. But kind of like that kind of, a lot of people's complaints where it was just throwing your toys out on the floor and making a show out of it, That's what a lot of people.
Yeah, true. That's true. I think the other really interesting thing about the show is that we're not really in the sort of the nostalgic arena. Rogue One is pretty recent. And so, yes, there are connections to that story. Yes, there are characters from that story. Yes, there are characters from animated shows, and Mon Mothma is in it. That's, first appears in Return of the Jedi. So it's not like it's not devoid of legacy characters. It's that the show is not using those legacy characters as nostalgic tools.
Right.
And so, I found that really refreshing, because, for example, Mon Mothma is somebody that we have seen in the movies. We have seen her in Rebels, but we're seeing a part of Mon Mothma that we had never seen.
Yeah.
The sort of the mother, the wife, level things of the senator and the politics, of course, and that we have not seen before. And so it's not sort of rehashing something that we've already seen for nostalgic purposes. It's layering what we know. And I once again, I found that really, really exciting and very refreshing to me.
Well, I was just going my little Mon Mothma little tangent, because
Go.
Every time she showed up on screen, I was like very invested. She stole the show for me. She was very intriguing, very like her story, even though she's I think she's advertising it to be like a lead of the show, but she's really not a lead in the show. She's there's some episodes where we don't catch up with her.
Yeah.
A couple episodes will go by, and she may be in like one scene or 2 scenes of the whole show. But every time she is in the show, I feel like it's very memorable. Kind of, they use her screen time very efficiently, and it makes you very invested in the larger scale. She kind of plays the point of view of how we get to see the larger scale of the galaxy and the Senate,
Yes.
how it's working.
Yes.
And then Andor and all the other characters we meet, they're kind of the bottom of the barrel. You get to see everything through like their point of view, and kind of there you can tell there's a big disconnect between the two. And she's kind of the middle. She kind of interacts with some of those characters, and it blends perfectly well.
And I like her in the show because it is yet another way of how people resist against the Empire. The way that Andor does is so different from Mon Mothma. And so it's really nice to have that other way of rebelling, that other way of resisting against the Empire. The other thing about Mon Mothma, and this is not a spoiler, is that the clothing. The gay man, Carmela the gay man, was sort of drooling at every time she showed up. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And the cosplayer in me is like, okay, how do they make that
work?
How do you make that? It was just, oh my God, it's just the costume design of the show was spectacular. Just absolutely spectacular. And really Mon Mothma, she was the jewel. She was the jewel in the crown of all the costume design. It was just incredible. Just really
enjoyed. Speaking of while we're talking about sets and costumes, and I enjoyed the planet where Cassian's from, not his home planet. I won't get into big spoilers, but his, because it's been shown in trailers, but the planet where he grows up, I guess, and where a lot of the show takes place. Ferrix. His home planet. And I enjoyed seeing that because I thought that was very.
Yes.
The set was incredible. It looked so real, so lived in. Really brought back some of that like New Hope, Empire Strikes Back kind of feel. And just seeing, there's like, I'm not sure exactly, I can't remember what their jobs are, but the everyday workers that live on that planet, they look like something you would see out of like a Great Depression era, working in the coal mines or working in the steel mills, like
very working class.
Yeah, very working class, blue collar. It was very, very nice, very nice touch, and something we've seen it animated a little bit, but not like this.
And the bellman, that bellman, oh my goodness, it was just marvelous. I rewatched. I think now I've seen it almost all of it 3 times. And it's really interesting how there are lots of scenes where you hear the bells from far away. That on the first viewing I just had not catch it. So it's this sound that is part of the town. There's a moment that Bix is waking up to the bell, even though the bell is like really far away. And so there's it's like you're in a town. You're in a town, and I love the way that you talk about that it's sort of a lived-in town.
Yes, very much so.
It really didn't have the feel of a set. It really had the feel of a town. Right. And I love that. I love that.
Small town feel too, because we see a lot of characters interact with each other, and kind of everybody knows everybody. And it just made it really interesting to see their interactions. I would like to spend a lot of the time on that little planet there.
The other thing that I wanted to say, and I'm going to put my film historian hat on, is that the show is filled with references to all sorts of genres in cinema, and also all sorts of movies. The very beginning of the show is sort of a neo-noir reference to Blade Runner, with the lights and the dark and the rain and the coats and all of that stuff.
Yes.
There's a character later that is going to get a job in sort of a very sort of corporate setting. And there are direct references to a French film from the 1960s called Playtime, about sort of uniformity, the uniformity of modern life. And so it's really interesting, and there's all of these elements that sometimes they're referring to a specific movie, sometimes they're referring to a specific genre of cinema that also is influencing television. Aside of the story, there is this sort of visual way in which the story is being told by connecting it to other stories that we have in American cinema and in American television. And I, as a film historian, I found that just delightful. It was like eating candy. It's like, oh my God.
I had a friend on Facebook who told me the way he viewed the show is it kind of reminded him of a like BBC kind of like drama, and a lot of the actors and the crew that work on this are from England, so that would make sense that they're drawing on what they know.
Well, I think we've done enough of spoiler free.
I think so too. So if you have not watched the show, this is your final warning. Pause here and then come back and listen to our spoiler thoughts on Andor.
Spoiler full thoughts. Yes. Where do you want to start? I don't really care. I have so many things.
I know.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
When did you feel like you started really enjoying the show? Like, what was it? A moment? Was it a character? Was it a scene? Was it an episode?
I think it was the first episode where Cassian goes to the prison. That's when I started to enjoy it. So about halfway through, I guess.
So that's episode 8.
Is it? I thought he went in I can't remember exactly.
He goes at the very end of 7.
Okay.
And he arrives at the prison. He is.
I think. Well, I guess it was the 7th.
Sentenced at the end of 7. Because he goes to prison in number 8.
The heist was really cool, and even the first arc with on Ferrex, the kind of local police force, that was really neat. But he got his money from the heist, and you would think we know where his story ends, obviously Cassian's, but to kind of see the repercussions of the heist, and he kind of selfishly, in a way, wants to just, I don't have to worry about the Empire. I did my job. I'm done. I'm just going to enjoy my life. And just kind of a good way of showing that the Empire will affect you in some form or fashion. And he had to deal with that, and kind of a repercussion of him turning on the rebellion.
Yes.
And that was very interesting. And then the prison, I enjoyed the prison scenes a lot. Those were very interesting, fascinating, and so tense. Oh my goodness. I enjoyed the prison scenes. They were very tense.
And the thing about the prison, sort of in the arc of Andor in the whole season, is that, he's seen the injustice of the Empire all through the show.
Yes.
When he is in Canary, in his home planet, he sees there's that wonderful shot of that mining, that they have made this huge hole of extracting whatever minerals they had in that planet. What happens to Marva's boyfriend, partner, husband, Clem. And so it's not that he's never seen the injustice of it, but the randomness and the cruelty of his being arrested for no reason, literally for no reason.
Literally just
standing around. That's exactly right. And then being sentenced for years to a prison. That, for him, I think that's sort of the moment where he says, no, we got to fight this. We can't. Right. You can't escape it. You can't just dig your head in the ground like an ostrich, because it is impossible.
It's everywhere. Yeah,
it is impossible to do so.
It's everywhere.
And so you're right. I think in a way, the Andor that we meet in Rogue One really begins in that prison.
Yeah, I think that shapes who he becomes and who we know him to be. It was just really cool, and all the characters in the prison, I really were rooting for all of them. That prison break episode was probably my favorite. It was so tense.
Pretty fun.
Kino Loy, Andy Serkis is a hell of an actor. What an actor. God, he's great. And so funny, I'll tell this quick little story. When we were watching the episode where they break from the prison, and they're getting to the outside, and you would see the big mass of water. I jokingly said to Haley, I said, watch, he's going to say he can't swim. And then he actually said it, and I thought, oh my God, no. And then it was heartbreaking. And something I'm kind of enjoying is they don't really reveal what happened to him.
No.
And I kind of hope they don't. I kind of hope they leave it as... I just enjoy that.
He might show up in season 2. We'll see.
He might, but I just enjoy that. We don't have to know the fate of every single thing. Leave a little bit of mystery. I'm okay with that.
One of the things that I sort of loved stylistically about the show was sort of the depiction of the Empire as something that visually it's very clean, but also very sterile.
Yes.
And so the ISB headquarters in Coruscant are just like grays and whites and blacks. That's all you get to see. I think the only full color that you see are in the ranks.
That or like the monitors.
And the monitors.
Right.
But everything else is sort of gray, black, or white. And then when we go to the prison,
same thing.
It's like squeaky clean prison. Right. And so it's really interesting how the show has sort of used the notion of order and the notion of discipline and translated visually into the look of the Empire. I was having a conversation with a friend last week about the music of Andor, and how it's so different from the sort of more sort of classically oriented of John Williams and Michael Giacchino in Rogue One, and even into a sense with the music of The Mandalorian. And here, there's a lot of electronic music, and I love the sort of artificialness, the unnaturalness of the electronic sound, because that's once again connected to the Empire.
Right.
It's sort of unnatural. It's like the Empire is an unnatural state of being, of socially being. And I don't know if I would have said, oh yeah, electronic music and Star Wars go really well. I would have said, I'm not sure about that. But this show proved me wrong. I think the way that the music is used in this show works so well. Speaking
of the music, it made me think of the whole prison scene in George Lucas's first film, THX 1138.
Yeah.
I've never seen that movie. Never seen the movie. I know, blasphemy.
Okay, you're fired.
Yeah. But I've watched clips and I've seen pieces of the movie as Andor was coming out. People were making those comparisons, so I was kind of curious about it.
Oh yeah.
And it's absolutely. So I know this was intentional. It was very, that movie is kind of the same way. There's squeaky clean. The prison was like it was the person. There's no personality. The humanity's kind of gone in that area, kind of like it is in the prison in Andor. And I just enjoyed that, kind of seeing that homage. I thought that was really well done.
Yes, and the world of THX 1138 is very much the sort of sterile, clean visual cues of Andor about the Empire. So it's absolutely perfect that the prison would look like that.
Yes.
And it is part of that reference to THX. So thank you for mentioning that. I did not put THX in my notes, but it is absolutely there.
Yeah.
I love the droid. I love B.
B, yes.
He's great. He broke my. I just wanted to hug that droid.
Star Wars is very good about just introducing us a new droid, and everybody falls in love with him or her because droids are wonderful. We just love droids. And
they really are.
Great.
Nick and I were thinking before recording this that we might do an episode on droids.
We should. So we really should.
Season 3, there might be a droids episode. So that was that. He's pretty wonderful. One of the things that I love, the level of detail about Andor's writing, but also about casting. And I think I mentioned this to you, and I was just going to call you Andor, Nick. Diego Luna is from Mexico, and he has a Mexican accent when he speaks in English.
Yes.
And so I love how he is from this planet called Canary, and when we first are introduced in this planet, everybody speaks the language of Canary. None of it is translated.
Yeah.
None of it is translated, and so we have this notion that Cassian Andor speaks Basic as at least second language, and so the Mexican accent of Diego Luna is makes sense,
right,
for a character that grew up speaking not Basic, but speaking a different language. I love details like that. They thought about things like that because, as you were saying, there are lots of British accents in the show.
Right.
And there are a few American accents, like Cyril speaks an American accent and his mother does as well. But it's really interesting how they sort of found a way of making Diego Luna's accent a natural component of his character. Because Cassian grew up not speaking Basic, but speaking Canary.
That's
I
pretty cool.
those
I didn't
are the
think about that.
oh, I was sort of like, oh yes, please give me more of this because they're
Yeah,
being really careful, really,
I
really careful.
I enjoyed his origin, seeing him where he came from, how he found Marva and Clem. That was really cool, and I forgot about it until you mentioned it. The whole time they're on Canary and they are with the native people, Cassian's native people. There's no subtitles, so we don't know what they're really
No,
saying. We're just
no.
kind of. It reminds me a lot like the Pixar movie Wall-E, where we don't really know what they're saying. They're just saying things, and we're just kind of visually having to figure out where the story's going. I really enjoy that. I thought that was well done. All the actors were really good in those
Oh
scenes.
yes, oh yes, and I love the fact that we don't know the story, but everybody we meet are young kids and young adults. So there's a story about where are the parents? If the parents are the parents
Yeah,
working
yeah,
in the
yeah.
mines, have they been taken into slavery and forced to work in the mines? And so these children are hiding in the forest. Like, and the show
Are they
doesn't
fighting?
give you any information.
No.
You're just sort of like, you need to figure it out. And it's not the end of the world if you don't, but it is really fun that it lets us as an audience sort of figure out a
Speculate.
story here
Yeah.
about what it works. You
What's our
mentioned,
imagination run
yes,
wild? Yeah.
yes. You mentioned Wally.
Yeah.
The first time that we see B, he is walking in a junkyard,
Yeah. Like
just
Wall-E.
like Wally is
Yeah,
in
that's
this
true.
planet of garbage.
That's
And
true. I forgot about that.
I was watching that and I'm like, oh my God, it's Wally.
Yeah, that's funny. I forgot that's how we introduced to Wall-E.
It was not until I
B.
saw it again that I sort of realized,
Yeah.
oh goodness
Wow,
me,
that's
this
cool.
shot is
That's
Wally.
really cool.
Totally Wally. You had issues with Dedra,
I did.
and I didn't. And I think it would be fun for the audience to hear our diverging ideas about this character.
So my issue with her, and this is speculating sorta, and we don't really know where it goes. I didn't really like the tension between her and Cyril. I found it uncomfortable.
Oh,
And I don't know because when they
can
had
can you explain what you mean by uncomfortable?
so when he goes to Dedra to kind of kind of talk about Cassian and what happened on Ferrex and all that, he kind of the scene they share where he's kind of like holding her kind of against her will, it's kind of makes me uncomfortable. It's really awkward and tense. I don't know if I'm assuming that's what it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And then for the finale when he rescues her from the mob, they kind of have for a split second I'm wondering, are they about to kiss? And I don't really I had that thought because maybe as Hollywood has trained me to think that's what's going to happen, but I just don't
if
like
you're less than 4 inches away, a kiss is going to happen.
Right, a male and a female character. Well, it just the idea, I like her as a character. The idea of her even being hinted at in a romance, it doesn't sit right with me.
I agree.
I don't know if it's gonna go that way or if
I agree.
That was the intention. That's what I picked up on, and it just I didn't really care for Cyril either. But
as a character in general,
yeah, I didn't really care for his character.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't find him interesting. But and then like I said, those two together, I just gave me a little icky vibe. I don't think fascism is a place to find love. I just don't. I don't. Well, people do, but I don't like it.
I completely agree with you. But I think this is an argument that I have with my husband all the time. He finds losers really boring. I find losers really interesting.
Well,
and I think Cyril is very much a loser.
He is.
In the sense that he is so righteous that he is self-righteous, but he has no sense of judgment.
Yes.
He doesn't know what it is that he needs to do to get it right. And I think I find it really interesting that you talk about these uncomfortable scenes between Dedra and Cyril, because Dedra has a very clear notion of what she's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Cyril is very interested in being right, in being sort of like, somebody is stretching the law. This should not happen. Come hell or high water, we need to stop them, without really thinking about what that means.
Right.
And Dedra is very much in an empire in which she's realizing they're doing this wrong. Like, after the heist, the empire sort of goes into lockdown. And Dedra is sort of saying, no, that's exactly what the rebels wants us to do. So there's a justification to resist against the empire by all the oppression that they are now going to start. So now you're creating more rebels by forcing more oppression, more repression in the galaxy. And Dedra gets it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things that I find so interesting about her, that she is inside the empire. She believes in order. She believes in discipline. She believes in control. She hates the rebels. But she also knows what the empire is doing wrong, that is making the empire more and more vulnerable. I completely disagree with her ethics. I'm just saying this out loud on YouTube. I completely disagree with her ethics. But I find it fascinating. I find her intelligence fascinating.
Yeah.
In the same way that I find Cyril's close-mindedness interesting, because it's so typical of so many people that have no power,
right,
and want to grab power in whichever way they can.
See, I get
That's my take. That's my take.
The sense of Cyril is that he was kind of told growing up, this is kind of the life you're going to be in. And he's to me, he seems like the kind of person that always just ran with that. He never questioned it. And he just, no matter what, he feels like, I have to do this regardless what I believe in. Actually, this is what I'm destined to do. That's kind of how I feel. He's always like kind of looking for his family's approval, or doing the right thing. He just kind of like those people that think they have to climb the corporate ladder to be successful or
That's
happy.
True.
That's kind of how I saw him, and I don't really see.
That's true. He believes in rank.
Right.
He's in rank.
He's kind of the person that doesn't have any kind of like critical thinking or like
like
any problem solving. He just kind of whatever. Yes, man. He's a yes man, basically. It's kind of how I've always viewed him.
What I find curious about him is that he is the strongest character when he's arguing with his mom.
True.
In all the other scenes, there's sort of the sense of, okay, I need to act as if I am blank.
Right.
But he is more authentically, and I find more a stronger character when he's constantly arguing with his mom. And she's what is it called in English? A ball buster mom? Ball buster. Yeah. Ball buster. Yes. Sorry, English is my second language.
That's okay.
And I want that woman. I want to give her 3 Emmys, not just one.
She's very obnoxious, but in a good way.
She is. Oh, I want to punch her in the face.
So obnoxious.
I don't have a mom like that at all.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of like, oh my God, who is this woman?
Gosh.
But it's really interesting that those are the moments when we see the strongest Cyril.
Yeah.
In all the other moments, he's all about going up that ladder, that corporate ladder of, because clearly he wants to be in the ISB. He clearly wants to be in the ISB. But he's always sort of he never knows what to do, what he really should be doing. He's not strategically, he's not savvy, he's not really intelligent.
No.
He's sort of following these rules that he thinks are the ones that he needs to follow,
right,
in order to become successful, whatever that means to him.
Right. And I don't think he really knows what that means. And I think
no,
I'm sure he's going to show up in season 2 the way.
Absolutely.
So I'm interested to see where he goes and what his deal is. But
one of the things that I basically jumped up and down when we are in Aldhani and we meet the rebels there, that we start getting a revolutionary manifesto in Star Wars.
No, who would have thought that?
These conversations. I have a good friend who was in another podcast on Star Wars that he talked about sort of Leninist revolution and Trotsky's revolution and how the Russian Revolution is sort of like inserted into the story. I am a Latin Americanist by training, and I kept finding connections to Cuban Revolution and to the Nicaraguan Revolution. So many elements in there are. It's going to be really interesting that maybe the future revolutionaries of America will have their first exposure to revolution watching Andor, and this is the spark. And from here they go read Marx and read Gramsci.
Starts them down a rabbit hole.
Because there's so much. I used to teach a class called Revolution and Art. So there's all of these little elements all throughout the show that are sort of like textbook rules and processes and steps to arriving at raising consciousness and the idea of a subject becoming a revolutionary, and the idea of rebellion, the idea of resistance, the idea of oppression and the effects of oppression. It's all there. It's all there. This is a revolutionary manual.
The rebellion is kind of not really put together very well at this point. It's kind of just scattered here and there, everywhere.
Totally.
And the whole episode after the heist is called The Announcement, and we kind of see the Empire's reaction, like we mentioned earlier. And I found that really fascinating. How Star Wars, we've talked about in the past, is kind of just a big myth. There's all different types of stories and all types of different eras, and it's not told in a timeline order. So really, this is kind of the first, timeline wise, this is kind of like the first big rebellious act, and Cassian's a part of it. Nemec, Skeen, all those characters are a part of it, and I think that the show does a really good job with these characters that oftentimes in war, whether that any war in history, there are unsung heroes, people that the history books will never mention, people that have died and sacrificed that we'll never know about, the world will never know, that have made the start of that revolution possible, or that rebellion possible. And that's what I really enjoyed about the show, that these are guys that they're not Luke Skywalker, they're not Princess Leia, Han Solo, but they are important to the fall of the Empire in Star Wars, and that's really cool.
If we connect it to our world, Mon Mothma's got to get a stamp for the Republic, but Nemec is not going to get a stamp.
No.
Unless Andor gets to publish that manifesto, and then it becomes like elementary school reading. I agree with you. I love how we get all the different layers of what it means to spark a rebellion, and all of the different factors that you need in order to create the perfect condition for that change. Because guys, revolution is basically a radical transformation of society. And that's what the rebellion is trying to do. It's trying to radically transform society from an imperial status to something else. And so it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see this moment of all of these different forces. We haven't talked about Saw Gerrera.
No, or Luthen, really.
He's got one scene, but boy, what a scene.
He has two scenes.
He has two scenes?
He has two moments. He's in the finale, and he shows up earlier.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's that first conversation where he says, "No, I'm not going to do it."
Yes.
Yeah.
And he, again, Forrest Whitaker, incredible actor, just kind of stole the whole show when he shows up, and very, very, and one of my favorite characters. I think his name is. They call him Two Tubes is his nickname, but Bentrick or something like that is his name.
I don't remember
his name exactly, but I love him. So I was jumping up and down. I knew exactly where we were going when he showed up. But man, those scenes those are probably some of my favorite moments in the show is Saw Gerrera showing up and Luthen having those conversations, and Luthen in general, but we'll talk about him in a second. But kind of seeing these different parts of the rebellion, kind of how they connect to one another.
Yes.
They're loosely connected. They're not like in Rebels, we get to see them all form up and like, hey, let's get organized if we're really going to do this. This, we're kind of just seeing pieces, how they help each other here and there, but they don't want to kind of give the Empire the idea that they're all unified.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because those two scenes with Saw Gerrera are the two moments where we get sort of the military aspect of the rebellion.
Yes.
With Mon Mothma, even with Cassian, even with his transformation in the prison, all we're getting is sort of like the racing consciousness of we need to fight this empire.
Mhm.
But the scenes with Saw Gerrera are very much about military strategy.
Right.
Do we let this go? Do we let all these people killed so the empire doesn't know what we're actually doing? And so it's really interesting to see the sort of more military connection that is very much part of Rogue One, but it's not really big in Andor, at least in this first season, except for the scenes with Saw Gerrera.
Yeah. I want to talk about Luthen, which I didn't really.
Please do.
Oh gosh, yes. I thought it was clearly Stellan Skarsgård. I've seen him in other things, but I don't know. For some reason, this is like he just takes control. I feel like it's his show sometimes. He just takes over and is like the most fascinating person on screen to me. So mysterious, so strategic, so clever, such a badass that I want more of this character. I the whole monologue he had with the ISB agent that was undercover, that was to me the heart and soul of the show. It gave a really good character definition of not just him but Cassian and pretty much everybody we see in the show. It all sums up their journeys, and I'm really fascinated by him and very excited to see where he goes in season 2.
I loved how throughout the show, like, I couldn't fix him. Like, I sort of said, okay, he's that kind of character, and then something would happen, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then something else would happen, and I'm like, wait a minute. And that's that monologue that you mentioned with the ISB officer was, for me, sort of really revelatory, because there's one moment, after the heist, I'm sort of thinking, is this like a radical, violent leader, sort of like Saw Gerrera? But then you realize that it's more than that.
Yeah.
And so what I love about Luthen is that we are constantly learning more about him, and we keep thinking, no, we don't have the whole story yet. Oh no, there's this other layer of him. Oh no, there's this other layer of him. At one point I thought, is this going to be a bad guy? Like, is this a rebel, but a rebel that is a very problematic rebel? And it doesn't seem to be going that way, but I love the layers of Luthen. I could have said that Luthen was my favorite character, but I'm in love with Marva, and I thought Dedra was really, really fascinating. But I totally agree. Luthen, that transformation of him from the rebel to the
store
to the store manager was like, whoa, he just turned into another human being.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The way he has to kind of put on a whole other personality is just, I feel like that's the mask. And obviously the real version of him is one we see him interacting with Cassian and the other rebels. And what good acting and just good writing.
He's incredible.
Like, even the little minute details that they add, like his posture, the way he's practicing the mirror, how to like speak, and
the hands.
Yeah. And oh man, he's just so,
it was pretty great.
So impressive, so incredible. Like I have a feeling it's going to end badly because he's not in Rogue One or the original trilogy, but I'm just very fascinated to see where his story goes.
I'm sort of curious.
He keeps me on my toes because, like you said, we learn more about him that we didn't know before, and
that's exactly right.
I wouldn't have predicted that, so
that's exactly.
I don't know what's going to happen with him, so I'm very curious to see where.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be sort of a constant character, and he wasn't at all.
Well, he wasn't, but when he shows up, he's very effectively used.
Oh no! Yeah. Completely agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
He feels like he's in the show all the time, but he really isn't.
No, true.
Yeah.
That discussion with Bell when he first meets Bell, saying Cassian is going to, Clem is going to join you, and she's like giving all these sort of like, no, we can't do this, no, we can do this, and Luthen screams, look at me, sort of like just taking control of the scene. Like, we need to do this. He is going to be important. It has to be done.
Right.
It's just, he is, I think he's probably the most complex character in the show.
Yeah, he definitely is. He definitely is.
And that is really quite marvelous. You mentioned Marva at the beginning of our episode.
Yeah.
And I loved her.
Oh, she's great.
I thought she was such an interesting character. I loved how, what is, let's be honest here, what is practically a kidnapping scene when
Yeah.
she's taking Cassian out of the planet.
Yeah.
She turns it into, I am not gonna let these idiots kill this little boy for being in this ship. I am
Right.
taking this boy away.
Saving him.
And so it's really interesting how what superficially feels like a kidnap, and it is, it is actually an act of love.
Yeah.
It is actually an
Act of kindness.
of selfless caring for this child,
Yeah.
who she doesn't want to be killed by the people who are going to arrive. And the whole idea of her staying in Ferrix, sort of like, I don't care, I'm old, I'm gonna die, I'm tired of waiting to die, so I might as well do something about this and become a rebel. It's just marvelous. It's just marvelous. And to see the mother from Harry Potter, because she's
the aunt from Harry
Potter. And Petunia, I think it's
Aunt Petunia, yeah.
From Aunt Petunia to Marva, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, you don't even recognize her.
Like, wow, this is marvelous. Marvelous.
So. She has probably my second favorite scene in the show, behind Luthen's monologue, is the scene where right before her and Cassian part for the final time, and she says, you can't stay here. I'm not going with you. Me and B are staying here. And he says, well, I'm going to be gone. Like, I'm going to be worrying about you. And she's like, well, isn't that what love is?
That's
and I'm just like, oh, it made me think of the in WandaVision, the quote Vision says to her, what is love without persevering? It's one of those just, it just hit me in the right spot. That got me very emotional.
Moment. That's a very beautiful moment.
Oh, got me beautiful moment. So emotional. And her death too was very like gut punch. Like we knew it was coming. We knew it was coming.
And her sort of revenge with the hologram at the very end of it is just, oh no, we could, I don't even know how long we've been talking, and we could talk 3 times this amount.
Yes.
I was rewatching the show recently, and there are just so many little details about character, about how people think about the world and life and others and love and betrayal and all of those things. It's just, I think it's magnificent. It's magnificent. It is not a typical Star Wars show.
No.
But it is a wonderful addition to Star Wars lore and to Star Wars television. I think so too. I think the show is doing something that none of the other live action shows have done. I'm glad that we know there's a second season.
Yeah.
Because if I knew that it was only 1 season, I think I would have been a little impatient about the pacing. I love slow things. I adore slow things. I love reading novels that are 1,200 pages long, and that I sort of crawl through that world. I love that stuff. And so I was not bothered by the pacing, but I was very glad to know there's more. Mm-hmm. That this is sort of setting up whatever comes next. Because I'm really not sure which route we're going to do. Like, I had assumed that the show was going to end with Andor meeting Mon Mothma. That's what I thought was going to be the end of season 1.
Yeah.
Back at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
And so, and then it got so slow that I thought, oh, the prison break will be the end of the episode of the season.
Yes. I remember you said that. I was like,
and it wasn't
like 5 more episodes.
I don't know if more than that.
Yeah.
So it just, I'm really excited about season 2. I am really excited about season 2.
I am too. Fortunately, we may have to wait a while, but that's okay. We got other awesome Star Wars.
Time flies.
God, yes, you're not lying. And we got other stuff coming to keep us over until then. And
there's plenty.
And I think
2023 is the year of Ahsoka, and I'm going to have. I'm going to be in the hospital. I'm going to be in the ER.
Don't say that.
I'm going to be in the ER.
I think the show, how different it is to the other shows and the shows that are probably coming next, is like we spent 12 episodes with this series, and the next live action show is going to be Mandalorian.
Mandalorian.
So like when we return to Mandalorian, it's going to be like, this is oh look, hey, we're returning to this fun adventure. So it's gonna make it rewarding. And
Yeah.
not everything in Star Wars has to be the exact same for it to be good.
True.
So
True.
give it a chance. Is my
Absolutely. I highly recommend it. I think it's marvelous. Thank you, Nick. Thank you,
Thank you.
audience. I hope this was not too long, but we just thought it was a super interesting show. So
there's still a lot we could talk about, but
I have pages of notes.
Yeah.
Pages of notes. But we did the greatest hits.
Leave some comments for us if you want to talk about
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. And don't forget to like our videos.
Please.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.